Welcome everybody to Books by Adrian. This is the Books by Adrian podcast, and with me today we have our guests from this week's episode of Livestream Sunday, Adam Gaffin and Clary Kavanaugh. Welcome back, guys. How are you? You guys still good?
We're good. Nice to be back.
I know for us it's the same day, but for them it's like 5 days later. Good.
Time travel.
Exactly. Yeah. Timey-wimey, wibbly-wobbly stuff. We were talking about sequential storytelling, serialized storytelling, rather. Excuse me. And you okay?
Yeah, I started laughing when I took a drink, and
sorry. Yeah, that happens to me too. Sequential stories versus anthologies. Do you guys have any particular feelings on either or? Do you prefer one over the other? I myself like to dabble in each. How do you guys like to craft your series? What do you think, Adam?
Well, mine so far have been serial. They go A, B, C, D, E. That being said, there are some short stories that I've written that jump around in time, and my whole idea is that eventually there are going to be enough stories, enough characters with enough stories that I can write, little short stories here and there, novellas and novelettes, to kind of fill in some of the gaps in between, and those will get anthologized. So they won't necessarily be mainline stories. They won't be the Cassidy Chronicles. They will be a Cassidy Chronicles anthology or a Cassidy Chronicles novel.
Yeah. I like both. For me, it depends on what type of story I'm writing. Although I do, like, if I'm writing a sequential series where, like, there's a big overarching plot, I have discovered that I have to kind of outline the entire series at one time, or at least have like a rough idea of, like, is there enough story here for this to be a series, or is this me trying to split up what is actually a single book into a bunch of tiny pieces that don't need to be split up.
Yeah, for sure. With me, like I said earlier in the live stream Sunday, mine just kind of spawned out of this one little short story that just kept growing out of my control, and the idea of still making each one of them accessible in that way. So it's not an anthology. It is sequential story. It is an overarching story, but each novel has to have a beginning, middle, and an end. It has to bring closure to the plot of that novel. Even if it's setting up stuff for future books, the main story plot has to be completely wrapped up in that first novel. So it's a clever little dance that we do between writing a complete story in one book and also, like, putting in all of the foreshadowing for the rest of the series, building mysteries for answering later and stuff like that. One of the things that I struggle with is how much to reveal in each book. In this first book, you want to tell people everything about your beautiful world, but you got to rein yourself in and be like, wait, reveal things slowly as we go, and leave things to be revealed in the second book and leave things to be revealed in the third. There's a giant mystery around the locations of my story, and so, like, I want to weave that throughout the entire series. I don't want to reveal everything in the first book and have everybody figure it out, or even if they do, I don't want to put it all in the first book. It has to grow organically like that, and reining that in is so hard. Nice catch, Adam. I like that. Very good. The mute button, right? That mute button, I do it every time I have to burp. Yeah.
I was going to say, as I try to work through some audio issues on my end, each of my novels has, like you were just saying, it has a beginning, a middle, and an end. It tells a story in each one, and then there is that arc of what the Artemis War going on through those 4 novels. But the second volume is their first steps out into interstellar exploration and running into the conflict with the Artemis colony. The third volume, Measure of Humanity, the plot in there revolves around some skeletons from Kendra's closet being resurrected and how she deals with them. The fourth volume, A Quiet Revolution, is about setting up a revolution on Luna. That's the main plot going on there. And the fifth one is the resolution to all of these various, to all of the various threads, which is, again, one reason why that book can't really be read on its own, because it does build on each of the other ones. I mean, there are so many threads that have to happen and all get tied together in that book.
I don't know if I would be brave enough to do something that big and to tie up that many plots in this. How did you manage to do that? Because I can't even comprehend the idea of tying up that many plots in a single book. How did you manage to do that?
Excellent question. Because I'm a pantser, not a plotter. I knew more or less what we wanted to end up. Yeah, Adrian, go ahead.
No judgment. I'm impressed. Impressed because pantsing is.
Judging you. We're
Hold
just
on, I've lost your audio.
Oh, am I muted? No, I'm not muted.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I was just shocked that you're a pantser like that, because good grief, man.
Holy, I can't even.
I plan a lot.
I could see being a pantser if you were just writing a straight up contemporary, the kind of book you said you never want to write on the live stream.
Or a standalone anything. If it's a standalone something,
that would make some sense. But I am so impressed that how did you not run into a million plot holes and continuity issues and I just can't even.
Yeah, I'm having a little mini heart attack over here myself. I can't see. I don't consider myself a straight up plotter the way that people think of as a plotter. So I always compare, or rather I use the comparison that George Martin and many other writers use of not plotter or pantser, but architect versus gardener. The architect having to pre-plan every minor detail before he even gets started building anything. And then the gardener who knows what he's growing and knows how to grow it, but depending on how much nutrients he gives the soil and how much water and how much sunlight, etc., all these factors create a different result in the end. And so that's more where I'm coming from, is the gardener side of things, where I have an outline. I know exactly where I'm going at all times. But every time I sit down to write a chapter, I write it almost as a pantser, where I allow for things to sort of happen. And if it's good and leads to good ideas, I'll keep it and I'll go back to my outline and I'll fix the outline with the new stuff in there so that I can continue to tell a, complete story. I just want the editing process to be less so that's why I do it that way. I just put so much work into the kind of crafting of it as I go and making sure that it's cohesive and it makes sense and it continues.
See, I put the work into I put the work into the running edits, because what I do as I'm writing is I will go back and before I start writing, I'll look at what I wrote the day before to catch myself up on what I was doing and what direction I was going, what kind of tone I had. And that's also when I catch a lot of the holes that I have inadvertently created. And if I'm writing and I say, okay, this needs to happen, I need this thing to happen, okay, I can't just drop it in here, otherwise it's going to be awkward. So that's when I go back, 5 chapters or 20 chapters and put a detail in back there, which are going to foreshadow what I now need. Which, for me, I don't mind putting that kind of work in as I'm doing it,
Right.
Because I'm still being creative. I'm still moving forward. And at the end of it, there's a lot less editing to do because I've gone over it. Right? Every time I every time I turn on the computer and open up a file and I start writing it, I'm doing some editing. So by the time I get done with it, I've edited some parts of it, 24 times and tweaked it and redone it and said, oh, well, this needs to be back here and this needs to be over here. So
see, I can't do that while I'm writing. So once I sit down to write, the whole idea is keep putting one word in front of the other and don't stop until the chapter is done or whatever you're writing is done. But what I do to accomplish the same thing that you are is every time I sit down to write something new, I first edit what I wrote the night before or the day before. Whatever I wrote yesterday, I'll edit first. I catch all my mistakes. I see all of the pitfalls of like my writing style. I fix things, I move things around, all that stuff you're talking about. I do that in a quick edit of yesterday's work, and then I start something new.
I guess I'm like somewhere in the middle of you two because I outline. How do I possibly explain the way that I outline? I can't show you guys because spoilers everywhere. But I outline based on like, okay, here's a paragraph or two of what's gonna happen in each scene in this chapter, but then like the details of how that's gonna happen like come to me as I'm writing the chapter. But I've also discovered that this particular book, I tried to do that and it bit me in the butt because it involves a competition. And I was like, okay, I know what each because it's a baking competition, and I watch way too many cooking shows. I'm like, okay, I know how this goes. I know that I need a cake competition, a chocolate competition, a cookie competition, blah 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 blah, what have you. And I know the point of the scene, but I'll get to the competition. I'm like, oh crap, I forgot to write down like what is supposed to go wrong in this competition. Like, why are we watching?
What's the story here?
Competition? Because like the point is to demonstrate the relationship between my main character and the character that she desperately wants to win the approval of, which is her grandmother, because her grandmother is coaching her in the baking competition. But because I didn't plot out what is supposed to go wrong here, and even though I know this is a chocolate competition, okay, it's a chocolate competition, so what does that mean? But this is the first time that that's happened. But the next book that I'm gonna write is based on it's kind of a Groundhog Day type thing.
Nice.
And so I think I'm gonna have to plan that out in more detail than I've ever planned anything out in my life, simply because of the principle of Groundhog Day to begin with is you repeat the same day over and over again.
Timey, wimey, wibbly wobbly. Of course.
Right.
Yeah.
So for somebody like that, I'm like, how would you do things like that? Does that just come to you out of nowhere?
So if I was going to do a Groundhog Day kind of plot, so the first thing I'd have to do is write out
I just had an idea. Sorry, go ahead.
Write out the basic. Okay, here is the first day, and then I think I would probably write out the last day, how everything is supposed to go.
Right. Yeah.
And then each iteration there's going to be a detail that changes that tweaks how things move each time. But I'm not going to know. I'm not going to know what the detail is until
you get there.
Until I actually write that. Until I actually write that particular day.
Yeah, but then again, your opinions are like that.
Yeah, I mean, look.
I would plan the hell out of this thing. I'll tell you what.
I'm gonna, because I'm just I know the general, like, okay, day 1 is when the stuff happens.
Right.
Day 2 is when things go really good. Day 3 is when things start to go timey-wimey.
Yeah.
Crazy. Day 4 is when they explode, like all of that stuff. But it's just like the who, what, where, why, and how of all of that is a little... I can't imagine being able to pants that, because...
No.
I'm in awe of the fact that you would be able to pants that, because I would just be like...
See, I would
well,
find...
I don't know that I'd be able to.
Oh, yeah. No, I would find an appropriate writing structure for it, and that's the idea I had while you were talking, Adam. I think you're the one who got me there, was... there's all kinds of different writing structures that you can, play with as a writer, and writing techniques. And one of them for outlining is the story circle. I think it's called. Sorry, I just hit my mic. The story circle, I think it's called, where you have or it's like a clock basically. You have midnight, and then you take the character through the entire clock all the way back around to midnight. And at every point, there's a different part of the hero's journey or whatever that they have to be on.
Oh.
And so you could plot that out. Yeah, where you would have, say, 12 hours. So say 12 days is your a Groundhog Day, journey, for example, for the sake of example. And then you could have a different journey thing that happens in each day. And then you'll see all the things that need to happen to get your character through that journey. And so that way, every time you write the day, the only thing different is whatever's getting your character to that point, that day.
Right.
For those 12 days, all the way to the end.
I have to look at that, because I have been dreading,
Let me see if I can find it. I'll throw it up on the screen. Go ahead.
Because as much as I've been I've been working on this Christmas competition book for so long, I think I said in the live stream that I've been on it since May or something insane, because it's coming out in November, and it's just a mess. I'm kind of dreading moving to the Groundhog Day one, just because I'm like, how does one even do this? I've watched a ton of Groundhog Day material, so I know how it works. I know the conventions of okay, this is a movie based on the idea of having a Groundhog Day, but just the conventions of coming up with okay, how do I turn that concept into a 51st Dates, for example, it's just oof.
So check this out. So the story circle right here, let me get rid of this big obnoxious banner on our screen. And so it starts at the beginning, and then it goes into what the character needs. Then the character is on the journey. They're going, they're searching for something, they find the thing, they take the thing, they return with the thing, they change due to the thing, and then at the end they're back to being themselves, but being a better version of themselves in the case of Groundhog Day, right?
And it's funny because I know this because it's a pretty common story structure. I've never thought of looking at it as a clock, though.
It's the idea, especially with Groundhog Day and that whole format. I think it lends itself very well because just the concept of time is ingrained into the actual plotting of the story. I think that would fit very well for it.
That's really cool.
The only thing that would...
Yes, Adam.
Just the only thing that would concern me, though, is that it's the law of unintended consequences. So, all right, so the first time they go through the day, it's a normal day. The second time they go through the day, they're going, wait, why does this feel familiar?
Yeah.
Third time they go through the day, maybe at that point they figure out, okay, I'm repeating the same day. Fourth day is the first time they're trying to figure out why am I repeating this day? You know, what am I supposed to be learning here? But every time they change something, until they hit the one thing, which is the key point, it's always going to go awry. So they might think that they're supposed to do X, and so they do X, and instead of getting them out of the loop, nope, that was the wrong thing.
Well, that's
so
actually
it's not so much cumulative as trial and error.
They try to do X, and I can't say what X is because spoilers, obviously.
Yeah, spoilers.
But that's what kicks off the loop in the first place, is that they try to do X. So, but they don't know they're in a loop until day 3, because the first time it was on purpose. And then day 3 happens, and they're like, oh
no, I'm stuck. Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
So, but I was originally only going to do 5 days, but after seeing that structure, and I know we're supposed to be talking about writing a series, so I'm like trying to...
Well, that's a really good premise. I think, number one, you could take it as far as many chapters as you want to take it, but just the idea that the first time it's intentional, like, oh, hey, I'm going to get a do-over, and I'm going to, you know, fix this thing that I want to do better or whatever. And then they realize they're stuck in it, you know, like just the weight of that realization on day 3. It reminds me a little bit of the John Mulaney Best Meal I Ever Had bit. Have you guys ever heard of comedian John Mulaney and his bit about the best meal he ever had?
I have not. Have you, Adam?
No.
It's the long story short, he's at a diner with his best friend. There's a jukebox, 3 plays for $1, so they put in $7 and chose 21 plays of Tom Jones's "It's Not New Pussycat." And then they ordered their food and they waited, and they just and he says that the first time, you know, it plays, it's Tom Jones's "What's New Pussycat." The second time it plays, your immediate thought is not, hey, someone's playing "What's New Pussycat" again. No, your first thought is, hey, "What's New Pussycat" is a lot longer than I thought it was. It's still going. It's a really long song. And then the third time it plays, you go, okay, maybe somebody's playing "What's New Pussycat" again. And then the fourth time it plays, you're like, okay, either somebody's just played it 4 times or somebody played it twice and it's a really long song. And so John Mulaney's whole bit is that the 5th time is the kicker. When it starts on the 5th time, that's when everybody realizes someone is messing with me and the whole place loses their mind. That's what that reminds me of.
That's interesting, because I was only going to do 5 days originally, because I'm like, I can't come up with enough material to do like 2 weeks or something. That's a lot.
See, but you're thinking of it in time when you should be thinking of it in story, taking a character through the arc.
You're right. And after seeing the clock and after hearing the story about like it takes 5 times, because I think because there's also that like saying that like someone has to see a product like 5 or 7 times before they actually buy the product, and that's what I think was so smart about your whole "I'm gonna turn it into a bunch of smaller books" thing, because he had like a bunch of opportunities to get people to see his stuff, and I bet that helped your sales. But I'll definitely take some of this from the podcast and apply it to.
That's what we're here for, man. We're just writers helping writers.
Because I've never tried to write like a time travel book, which I feel like is similar in itself to writing a series, because a series takes place over a long period of time. A time travel book is like condensing that idea into a single book or two and having to deal with the consequences of that in the time that most people have to deal with the consequences of it over an entire series, if you have like a big overarching thing like Adam does.
Yeah.
Well, the only issue with writing a time travel book is you have to decide kind of which camp of time travel you want to be in. There's one train of thought which says you can jump back and forth in the timeline, and every time you do something in the timeline, it affects things downstream. So if you go back 500 years and do something, you're going to change everything in your timeline. So when you go back upstream to where you started, it's different because you changed it. But the other kind of school of thought is that if you're time traveling and you go back 500 years and you change something, you have just created a fork in the time stream. And so where you were, you can never go back to because you're now on a different track.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, Lord, I didn't even think. Thank you, Adam.
Well, but Groundhog Day rules are pretty different because Groundhog Day is more about us being stuck in a loop than it is about actual time travel. So
right.
you have a little wiggle
and if you're working in magic,
yeah,
you know, then
and
if you're
that's
working
a whole
in magic,
other
then
kind
you
of
can.
worms.
Yeah. So basically, I was gonna go with the loop idea, and then like on whatever the like second to last day is. Somebody finds out and they're like, you used magic when you weren't supposed to. You stupid girl. If you don't fix this by blankety blank time, then we get to the fork in the road problem. So like I'm still gonna bring that in, but like I didn't want it to impact.
Well, it makes sense because if she's stuck in a loop, she's not affecting anything outside of that loop until she actually gets out of it.
At a certain point when it's like the loop is starting to break the space-time continuum here, or the
crazy.
And
hey Adam, I gotta take a second to appreciate your walls, man. They're so very bright, such a beautiful color, man. I really like the color of that room. You could probably do like green screen without even needing a green screen because that's such a solid, like perfect shade of that color.
I can, except for the doors. You know,
but I kind of like that because it would look almost very fantasy world if you could green screen the walls into like outer space, and then you have like a door and like a dresser. Yeah, like you look like you're inside the TARDIS or something. It would be crazy. It would be like interdimensional and stuff. It would be awesome. I wanted to run through a couple of prompts from what I planned for Livestream Sunday. Thankfully, that discussion kind of went its way. I want to throw a couple of these out there because I know folks are going to be wanting to talk about it. In your writing in general, protagonists versus ensemble cast. What are you guys doing? What do you guys like to do?
I like ensemble casts that have multiple point of views.
Oh my God, he did it!
He's doing it. He's doing it. That's awesome.
Classic, dude. Classic.
That's awesome. You need to keep doing that. So I like ensemble, but I switch point of view so that to me it feels a little more like I only have to focus on one person's story at a time, as opposed to having like 5 main characters and I'm writing in third person point of view and it's all at once. That is a talent in a league of its own that I cannot do.
You can you could even, well, anyway, this is how I did it when I went back to edit my first draft. Since I have 3 main characters, even though I have other point of view characters sprinkled throughout, I have 3 main characters, and so what I did was I plotted each of their arcs individually. I went back and edited their chapters as one story like that, which again lends itself to the idea that I could release them as 3 individual novellas. But again, I don't know, man. I want to put a big giant novel out. I would be so proud of myself if I could do it. Just a big giant novel. On my first one, just like $30. So telling a character arc through one novel versus the whole series. I bring this up because if you are writing a series, you have to take your character, if they survive through the whole series, you have to take this character on an arc throughout the series, but they also have to have significant arcs in each individual novel, or else the novel feels incomplete. So, how do you guys approach this particular challenge?
I'm gonna let Adam go.
Hit it, buddy.
Okay. So the first book, the prequel, it's really all about, both of them. It's about Ayana and Kendra equally as they discover, they grew up together. They were childhood friends. They were apart for a dozen years, and during those dozen years, things happened that the other one didn't know about. And they've learned a bunch of that stuff beforehand, before the book gets going, but there are still things that they don't know about each other. So they're learning about each other and trying to figure out at the same time what's going on. In the rest of the series, the focus really pivots to Kendra, because while they're each pursuing a dream, Ayana's dream, she's perfecting a teleporter, which is kind of a very narrow dream. It's a very focused dream. Kendra's dream is much broader and more inclusive. She wants to drag humanity out to the stars. So that's her overarching, story arc, pulling humanity off the planet and getting them out to the stars. But in each book, there's something going on which is getting in her way and, trying to prevent that from happening. And she's just saying, okay, I'll deal with this, but I'm not giving up on my dream. So.
I like it. What about you, Clary?
I mean,
Overarching
again,
over the series or individual novels?
I mean,
How do you do it?
I try to do a little bit of both. I will say that once I knew that the Holiday Hijinks series was going to be a series, I was like, oh boy, okay, so she already went through the arc that I had planned for this book. How do I, keep her character in character and, make her continue to grow throughout each book? And, I think it's really a matter of me remembering, where did she start this story and where did she end the story, and how can we build on the themes of the previous book to create a character arc for her.
Yeah, I ran into the same concern as well when and I'll let you continue a second. When I finished the first outline for the first novel and realized that there was more story to go, there was going to be 2 more books, I found myself asking the same question. I'm like, oh my god, I just took my characters through a full arc in this first book. Where are they going to go? They have to continue to evolve. And so I had to dedicate time to outlining the entire series and tackle that particular issue. I'm sorry, go ahead, continue.
No, I was gonna go down the exact same thread you went down, which is that's why I recommend to authors, if you're thinking about writing, I'm not saying go into detail and write out every chapter and every scene and every thing that's going to happen in the entire series, because you never know what's going to change as you're writing, as you're editing, all that kind of stuff. But you do, I think, at least need to have, here's the beginning, here's the middle, here's the end, so that you don't run into what Adam and I ran into, and you can make sure that your character still has somewhere to go by the time you get to the next book.
And I'm gonna want to hear Adam's take on this as a straight up pantser.
How do you do that?
But first, I wanted to explain that in my outlining of the series, what I ended up doing in order to accomplish this very thing is I talk a lot about how I resort to the structure of screenplays and scripts for movies. to plot my novels because it's tight storytelling. And so what I do is
Right.
I go off of what I learned from the Screenwriter's Bible, and it teaches the 7 turning points, which is essentially the hero's journey condensed down from like 12 down to like 7, right? And so these 7 turning points make up the 3 acts of a typically well-made, well-told story in a movie. Okay. And so what I'll do is I'll apply that structure to my series as a whole. The first 3 turning points take place in the first novel. The 4th and 5th take place in the second novel. And then the 6th and 7th take place in the third novel. But then when I go to plot each individual novel, I again go to a full 7 turning points within that story. And so you still have a complete story in that first novel. You still have a complete story arc, a complete hero's journey for your character, but it only makes up the opening act of your 3-act structure,
I guess my
of your 3
question
books.
for you at that point would be, and then I definitely want to hear from Adam, because I imagine it's going to be a lot harder if you don't plan like we do. If you know what the big pieces are going to be in the series, how do you then how far do you have to backtrack as far as like character growth, like to get them to, they're now at point 3 in giant story, point 7 in
right.
the
Well,
book.
you try not. First of all, you try not to get so bogged down in the minutia of it, and try to always look at it from a story arc standpoint, from a storytelling standpoint. And so, if you have 7 turning points throughout your entire novel, and then you isolate the first act of that, the first of those 3 acts, so the first 3 turning points, and you map those events of those first 3 turning points, map those events into a 7 turning point structure that tells a full and complete story. How does character get from the beginning? And by the way, if you've already outlined your first novel before you get to realizing this, then you already have that. It's already there. It just makes up the first act of your 3-act or however many act structure for your novels as a whole. As long as you're always telling a full and complete story in each, I look at it on the macro and on the micro. You're telling a complete story within all 3 of my novels. I'm telling a complete story in each individual novel. Each chapter also has 7 turning points. Each chapter is a complete story arc, a little tiny complete story arc in each and every single chapter. And again, that's more from my love of movies and TV shows and the way that they tell serialized stories, where you have to tell a complete story in every scene. You have to give a beginning, middle, and end, and transition to the next scene. Beginning, middle, and end, transition to the next scene. And that's just good storytelling. So I just try to model that and just keep it going. Yeah. Adam, how do you do that, buddy? How do you map a character story arc throughout the entire series versus each individual novel as a pantser?
So I've said this to other people. So I might be the author, and these might be my words, but these are the stories that I write are not my stories. They are my characters' stories. They are my characters' lives.
Amen.
And because I'm writing it, the way I'm writing it, I'm discovering it as they're telling it to me. So, and as it's happening to them. So, just like you don't know what your life is going to be. I mean, if you've ever tried to script your own life, and then you wonder why other people get their lines wrong, you know what kind of a problem that is. So, they're not, especially Kendra, she is not on a specific journey. She is pursuing this dream, like I said, of dragging humanity out to colonize the stars. Mm-hmm. And everything that happens to her, I'm trying to write her as a person reacting to things. Now that, and learning from what is happening to her. The second volume is she's learning how to take responsibility for other people. Because all of a sudden she's in charge of this, this growing organization, and she's responsible for these other people and what they do and the actions they take, and she's responsible for their lives. And she's never dealt with anything like that, so she has to, that she grows up a little bit. She learns, okay, this is how you deal with this kind of a responsibility. The third one is she's learning how to respond to her past, a past that she didn't even know about. It was hidden from her. So it blindsides her, and she's reacting to it. And she, so as she's going through and she's listening to these other people, she's listening to the other characters who are giving her advice and saying, I think you ought to do this. I think you ought to do that. I would do this, I would do that. And she's got to make up her own mind as to what she does and how it's going to work. And just like, every one of us, she'll do things and it doesn't work. Things that she does blow up in her face. She's not the perfect leader and she doesn't have the perfect subordinates who she says, okay, go do this, and they go do that exactly as she said, and it happens exactly as she wants it to. She has subordinates who do their own thing, and she's got to deal with the fallout.
I guess my question for that then would be, because this is me coming from the sphere of being an editor, where I always have to encourage my students, okay, your characters have to be the one controlling the story. They have to push the story forward. If you can replace your main character with someone else in your book, you've got a problem. How do you keep your characters from becoming mainly reactionary, passive? How do you still get people to fall in love with the character and want them to succeed if throughout the books they're primarily just reacting to what's happening around them, I guess?
Okay, so because it's all about her pursuing the dream. Her end goal is getting humanity to the stars. And that is what she is pushing for. That is what she is dragging everybody else along with. And so it's not that she has to react to things, let's call it the real world, okay?
Yeah. She
has to react to the real world interrupting her dream, but that doesn't mean she stops pushing her dream forward. So her quest, her goal, her growth goal, if you want to put it that way, is to achieve her dream. And all the reaction stuff that she does is one part of it. But at the same time that she's reacting to these things that want to stop her and stop her organization and stop her family, she's still moving forward on a parallel track, pushing her dream forward. And through the whole conflict, through these whole 4 volumes, it could have been just, okay, pure reaction. These guys want to stop us, so I'm going to, we're going to build up a military and we're going to fight them and we're going to stop them, and then we're going to go back to the exploration. That's not how Kendra works. Her goal is the exploration. The other guys trying to stop her, they're an annoyance. They're an irritant. They're, oh God, I got to spend more time on this. So, so she is so focused on what she wants to do that it pulls you along. She is very active. She's pulling everybody towards her goal. And despite anybody trying to dig in their heels and stop her and stop her family from doing it.
Very cool. Okay, I just had to ask because I was like, my editor brain needs to compute this for my students.
Yeah.
It's Clary, you were asking about the story structure I was talking about. I actually have a video on it that I did a long time ago, so it's not gonna look as nice as my camera looks now. It's not gonna sound as nice as my microphone sounds now. I don't want to hear any gripe from anybody about any of that. Okay, it's an old video. I'm going to remake it eventually, but it's this one here in the middle. Story structure and character arcs. I did it for AlmaCon, which is a kind of almost like a Comic-Con that happens in Kazakhstan, Russia. And it was for a panel that was a digital panel that it was supposed to play like in the main room on the main, screen. They were going to play basically a collection of videos like this, like little how-tos and stuff like that for writing. And mine was one of them. Unfortunately, it never actually aired there because on the first day there was some kind of like bomb scare or something crazy happened.
Oh my.
And the whole thing was canceled and everybody went home and nothing ever happened with it. So the video just sits here, but it has the 7 turning points that I'm talking about. So it's this one right here. I'm going to open it up real quick and turn off the sound, but it's going to be during the same time as Livestream Sunday season 1. So it's definitely like way back there. But
Okay.
you guys can check it out, and I will share the link with you, Clary, in the private chat. Actually, it's already in there. And
You did,
look at that, a whole like year younger. Look at me. Look at that beard. Oh my goodness. Okay, that's enough of that. Ugh.
Well,
was-
I'm
that
just
was
interested
terrible.
in the content, so
You don't have good content. Yeah,
doesn't really matter what it looks like to me.
got the shivers from that. Ooh, goodness.
We all hate watching ourselves on camera.
So this brings me to the hero's journey, redemption arcs, and tragedies. These are, as far as I can tell, the main, like broad strokes, 3 kinds of stories that you can tell. You're either telling the story of somebody rising up to be a hero, you're telling the story of somebody who has been on the wrong side of things and is coming back, or you're telling a story that's going to end as a massive, horrible bummer. And if you write it well, people will love it. So, what do you guys like to read in terms of these kinds of story arcs? Like what are some of the ones that come to your mind right off the bat? What writers do you think of when you think of the hero's journey or tragedies or anything like that? What do you guys think? Clary, what about you? I can see your noodles turning in the brain right there.
I'm my noodles are turning because I'm trying to think, not because I have an answer.
Adam.
Yeah, let's go to
Okay.
Adam while I.
Adam for the save.
All right, so it's kind of a punt, actually. I'm not. If I'm reading it, I want to engage with the character. So whether they're on the rise to become a hero or the redemption journey doesn't make it as much of a difference to me, as long as I can buy into the character and they are, I won't even say likable, but engageable. Because there are some scoundrels out there.
But they're relatable scoundrels that you can identify
Exactly.
with and sympathize with. Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
Yeah. So the arc itself is less important than getting the characterization down right. Because if you can get the characterization down right, then some flaws in the arc are gonna, you can overlook because you believe in the character and you believe in what they're trying to do. And okay. So as for a preference as to which kind of arc, Neither particularly, again, it comes back to the character.
Yeah.
I guess, so I agree wholeheartedly that it is all about the character. I didn't think I had a preference, though, until Adam started talking, and then I was like, ooh, actually, when I think about most of my favorite characters, which I will admit, this is going to make me sound like a really bad author, but most of them are from movies and television and not books. I do read a lot. I just, for some reason, I tend to just gravitate toward characters that I can visually see rather than ones that I read about. But most of my favorites are usually redemption arcs because I love a morally gray character. I love somebody who is not overtly doing the right thing or overtly doing the wrong thing. One of my favorite characters is the evil queen from Once Upon a Time on ABC, if everybody watched that, because ignoring the horrible writing that happened in the last couple of seasons when they
I wasn't gonna say anything, but
I'll say it. But ignoring most of what happened in the last couple of seasons, I thought that overall what they did with her character arc was really compelling, because you started off and obviously she's the evil queen, so you think, I'm not gonna root for her, she's supposed to be the villain, and then you see more of her backstory and you see more of how she's a different character with different people, and you start to go, oh, she's not just the evil queen, she's a real human with real issues. And I just don't, I like hero stories. I know that a lot of books, I guess you could argue mine are also hero stories if the only three choices are those, and like, I like a lot of them, but I feel I'm very tired of hero stories in which the main character is the one to save the world, because most of what I read is a lot of middle grade and young adult. I can totally swing it if an adult is saving the world. That's fine. But if a kid and a...
But I'll be damned if a child is gonna stand up in here and save the world.
Well, I mean, I'm not trying to sound like I'm not even that old, but it's just like, I just feel like ever since The Hunger Games came out, and that is a book series I really, really enjoyed. But I feel like ever since it came out, I feel like Adam has some feelings about that I want to know, because I saw the little like head shrug that you did when I said Hunger Games. I don't know. I just feel like ever since that
Involuntary
came out,
spasms.
when it comes to hero stories in fiction for people that are not adults, I just think a lot of authors take the idea of being a hero very literally, meaning that like they have to save somebody from something rather than just like,
I agree.
Yes, technically my character is a hero if those are the three types of arcs that we're talking about. But she's not saving anybody from anything. She's just like overcoming her own
see, that's the thing, is that, people hear the hero's journey and they immediately think superheroes or something, or action heroes. And the thing is that the hero's journey is not about what you do outwardly. It's about what's going on internally inside the character. What these things that are happening in the plot are doing to the character, what his choices in these events is doing to him as a character, or her as a character. So yeah, absolutely. You have to always think of, the hero's journey as more of a structure for the changing, the evolution, the arc of a character, and not so much about like, oh, he's saving the world or this or that. Because for example, I'm gonna run through really quickly the 7 turning points, and then I want to very quickly get to like one last prompt before we wrap up. The 7 turning points as I use from the Screenwriter's Bible to write my novels. The first one is the setup. doesn't need any explanation. It's what is the status quo? What is your ordinary world? What is a day in the life of your character, whatever that may be? The second turning point is the catalyst. The catalyst is what most writers think of as the inciting incident, right? So the catalyst is what sparks the story into action, what brings your character into the story. The third turning point is the big event. The big event is also known as the point of no return. It's the moment where your character makes a decision that changes everything forever. Before this moment, even after the catalyst, before this moment, the character could have chosen at any point to go back home, mind his own damn business, and not go on this adventure any further, and nothing would be different in his life. But after the big event, after the point of no return, after he actually becomes active in this story, nothing will ever be the same again. He can't go back to the way he was. He has to move forward. After that, the fourth turning point is the pinch, and the fifth is the crisis. These two are basically the same thing. They are the back and forth of the story, the main chunk of the middle. It is the action between the hero and the villain, or the characters and the disaster, whatever's happening, whatever the antagonist energy is in the story, it's them versus each other, back and forth. The pinch does this and the crisis does this, but the difference is the crisis, which is the fifth turning point, ends with the worst thing that can possibly happen to your character. The worst thing that could possibly happen happens. He hits his lowest point. Every writer knows this particular area of the hero's journey. The sixth is the showdown. Again, just like the setup, no explanation needed. It's hero versus bad guy, the big battle at the end. The big problem has to be solved. The whatever needs to happen. The internal change has to happen here. And the seventh is the realization, also known as the what was the other word for it? There's the realization, or the realization is the end, and then the other one whose word I forget is if the story is going to continue, then what is the question that's going to keep going further from here? So you're either ending it or you're continuing it, but that's the seventh turning point. And that tells a full and complete story in every scene, in every chapter, in every novel, in every series. You can use that structure to map your entire story. Before we leave, since we are very short on time, I wanted to hit this very last prompt here. I know writers who only write series, and I know writers who only write standalone pieces. And I find it very hard myself to write a standalone piece and walk away from it and write something new. I always envision of what's going to happen next, or what else is happening in the world, or this entire universe, or whatever it is, right? Like, that's just how I like my stories. So that's how I think when I'm writing. So many writers can write a standalone story, end it, walk away from it, onto something else, something new. Do you guys have trouble with this like I do? Because I can't just write a standalone piece. Do you dabble in both? Do you do standalone stories? What's your take on this, Clary?
Oh, okay. Well, I think this is why I like writing stories with the same characters, but that they each stand alone, because I like jumping from one project to another, because I will find myself getting a little burned out on certain projects if I just got really big on the screen. If I spend
just your spotlight, that's all that is, just
too
spotlight.
much time on one story, I just kind of find myself going, okay, there's so much other stuff in my brain. I would like to give this a break and like move on to something new. But sometimes, and so I struggle with, I think it's going to be a standalone, and then it turned into a series. I definitely struggle with that. I don't struggle with writing a book and then moving on to another book because I'm wondering what happened next. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I mean, if you're writing a series, then you're obviously going to tackle what happens next right after that. It's not so much of an inkling of what's going to happen next, a need to continue the story as it were. It's more about exploring the world further for me, I think. Like, even if the story is done, I'm like, okay, that story's done, but this world is so, fun. I could tell a whole different story in this world. Adam, what about you? How do you tackle this particular thing as an author?
So my thought about that is it's kind of a hybrid view of it, because, all right, the Cassidy Chronicles were these 5 books, and there may well be more stories, but in my mind, the Cassidy Chronicles center around Cass and Ken, Ayana and Kendra. So any more books in that series are going to center around those two. But there are also other stories that I want to write in this universe, which are going to be standalone novels. There's one I'm working on. Well, actually, no, it may end up being the first book in the series. But the idea, again, is that there are individual novels. They happen to share the same universe, but they can exist on their own. There'll be enough background in there so that people are grounded in the universe, and if they want to go explore other parts, they can. So that is my main focus right now. Right now, I'm not. I probably could, if I wanted to, derail, the whole Cassidyverse thing and go do something else. But right now, that mine is so rich, I don't want to walk away from it. I want to tell these stories. I want to get them out there, and get them out and get them out of my head.
I hear that, man. Yeah, it is one of those things where you want to get them out of your head. One of my characters in my novel has lived in my head for years, and I kept trying to shoehorn her into different stories, trying to find where it is that she existed until this story came up. And when I was writing that prologue, which was originally a short story, she's not the point of view character, but she's in the chapter. And so when she showed up, I was like, oh, of course, this is exactly where she belonged all enough. Oh, she's one of the main characters in this novel. Oh, it's a novel now. It happened very quickly. It happened very, very quickly. All right, guys. So thank you so very much for joining me. This was a very fun topic to talk about. You guys were very excellent guests. I can't thank you enough for being here for both of my shows, Livestream Sunday and the Books by Adrian podcast. For folks at home, their links and everything that you need to know about both of these excellent authors is below us in the description. Please leave a like, a comment, and subscribe, and hit that bell. And every time that we go live, you guys can be notified and show up for it. I'm going to actually try to do more live stream stuff outside of Livestream Sunday and outside of this podcast. I want to do some, the kind of stuff that Author 2 really likes, the writing sprints and all that kind of stuff. But I'm trying to work on that. The website is almost ready. It'll be up very soon. Adam Gaffin, thank you so very much. Keep the great sci-fi stories coming. I want to have you back to talk more about your specific journey and your specific books. Clary, likewise, I want to have you back for your own episode where we do a nice little deep dive into you and your process and your journey as a writer. For both of you, is there anything that you want to tell the folks at home? Anything coming up? Anything you need them to know about? Clary, I know that your computer's dying. Let's go with you first.
I'm so sorry that my computer's dying, but if there's one thing I want you to know is if you want to follow me on Instagram at Clary K author. Dang, I almost got through that without stuttering. And then the third book in Lissa's Holiday Hijinks comes out on November 13th. Fingers crossed I can actually get it done and uploaded on time.
Sounds good. I'm sure you can make it. I have every bit of confidence in you. Adam, how about you, my friend? Why don't you tell the folks at home what they can expect from you coming up?
Sure. So dropping in just a few days, we have the Artemis War Omnibus, 5 books and an exclusive novelette, all Cassidy Chronicles novels. It's going to drop on Ayana's birthday, the 23rd of September. And you can follow me on Instagram as well, at Adam Gaffin. And yeah, it's been a blast being here. Loved hearing everybody's opinions and thoughts. And the best way to learn is to talk to other authors.
Amen to that, man. Absolutely. Talk to other authors, learn from them, learn from each other. And, you know, earlier in Livestream Sunday, we were asked about imposter syndrome. Honestly, every author out there who is at all accomplished will tell you in the early days, you're going to have to steal from everybody. Steal from everybody. Everybody that you love, everything that you love in storytelling, steal it, grab it. I take things from Neil Gaiman. I take things from George R.R. Martin. I'm not ashamed to say it. I'm a George R.R. Martin baby. My chapter structures are modeled after his chapter structures. I am not ashamed to admit it. It's good. I like it. I'm doing it.
Yes. And if you find that you want to write but you don't have an idea of your own, try fan fiction, because it gives you
it gets
really
your juices flowing.
Yeah,
sure.
It teaches you the craft without the pressure of, I have to come up with something out of thin air. Don't try to sell it, because you'll get sued. But if you love writing and you want to learn how to be a better writer, but you don't have any ideas, go write fan fiction. I did that for 4 years before I started writing my own stuff.
That's wonderful advice. I agree wholeheartedly. Absolutely. I used to write fan fiction for Heroes, that old TV show. I rewrote from the second season forward. I just thought I can do it better. All right, guys. For everybody at home, come back on Sunday. We will be doing live stream Sunday at 4 p.m. with Nicholas Adams. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be fun. And this particular gentleman is very, very interesting, as he has an associate's in pre-med. He has a bachelor's in biology, and he has a bachelor's in architecture, and he has a master's in architecture. And I don't know how any of this affects his writing as an author, and I can't wait to find out. So come back on Sunday, 4 p.m. Join in the chat. Ask questions. Have a great time. Thank you so much, everybody. And Books by Adrian is out.